The United States national bird has had quite the comeback story. The bald eagle is one of the most iconic symbols for America. In 2009, there were just over 72,000 bald eagles in the lower 48 states. 10 years later, in 2019, there are now over 316,000.
They're a really cool species. They were in a lot of trouble with their population numbers a long time ago, but once regulations were introduced, they're a long-lived species and they can find food in a lot of places. So their numbers really started to skyrocket, and hopefully it just continues. What we're doing right now is really working, where we're introducing more legislation that is protecting their species and their habitat, and also the things that are killing them. And if we're taking away all of those obstacles that are keeping them from living a long life and having as many babies as possible and finding new habitats and things like that, this is the best way to do it, and just continuing down the path that we're moving on.
Truly a great comeback story.
Having the original ham tossed crust. All right, what else for you?
If we were not wearing masks, then I think people would probably think that's a poor decision, and they would probably look down on it. So when that does go into effect tomorrow, because it was actually supposed to go into effect on the 10th, I don't think a lot's going to change. I honestly think that most businesses and most people are still going to wear masks just because it's what they're used to. And there's probably gonna be some stubborn people that are like, yeah, I'm not gonna wear the mask. But we as a company, we have to require the mask. So
I would say the biggest change that our store had to make for COVID would be just to constantly maintain the mask protocol so everyone's safe. Even though people may not want to wear the masks, we still have to implement it. That's just how it goes.
I need more time because I haven't been able to get the vaccine yet. I had a lot of bad experience with family members that had got contact with COVID, that had the COVID, and I take it very seriously.
no, the mask actually has not made my job any more difficult than it was before. Even if it was not difficult, it hasn't changed how I work in general. The COVID standards for us though have made my job more difficult. I just have to be more on top of sanitation than I normally would, but other than that, it hasn't really made it more difficult.
Road, you said 1438. Okay, and what were you looking to get today? Sure, do you want that in the original ham tossed crust?
A traditional tattoo style is coming to the United States after being forced out of Japan by the negative history around tattoos. The Japanese traditional style, or irizume in Japanese, has not seen much change since its creation in 1607 Japan. With bold, bright colors and a traditional history behind it, nothing had to change.
The strong, distinctive part of Japanese tattooing is a lot of it has to do with the background, because there's elements in the background which could be waves, wind, clouds, rocks, and that's kind of the glue that ties the whole tattoo together. And what's common in a Japanese tattoo is one subject, like a tiger or a snake, and then you adorn areas around them with common flowers often. And also Japanese tattooing is kind of seasonally themed as well. So that makes it a very distinctive style of tattooing. It's also very timeless because Japanese tattooing that was done, say, 100 years ago, you're going to see that exact type of tattooing in modern times. And that's what I model my work from. And 100 years from now, people doing the Japanese work, it should look like it looks today and looked like 100 years ago.
I think what's really strong about them is just the saturation of color versus black. They have I personally think they have a minimum color palette. So whenever they put all those heavy blacks and that little bit of color, it's just so eye-catching. You can't miss it.
Tattoos have been a part of Japan's culture throughout almost all of their recorded history, but they have been looked down upon through recent history and outlawed in 1872 and 1936, only to be legal again in 1946 after World War II. But they are still frowned upon in today's society.
So actually, I know that they didn't particularly like them. Most of the time it was like a symbol of status actually, that like they would mark their criminals with tattoos. A lot of people get those like bands or like wristbands, ankle bands. Those would signify that like you did a crime and you have like a life sentence. So they still, a lot of older Japanese people find tattoos to be marks of like Yakuza criminals. I know there's bathhouses that traditionally don't like people who have tattoos. They won't let them bathe in the same waters as people who don't have tattoos. So it's a little frowned upon, but as time progresses, it's getting more accepted, but it's still a little controversial, I guess. Yeah.
For what I hear, they don't like it at all. They look down upon it. It's more like a gangster type thing.
With tattoos being used to mark criminals in the older history of Japan, experts say a more recent reason as to why they are looked down upon is the association with the infamous Japanese mob group called the Yakuza. The Yakuza gained popularity in Japan after the end of World War II. The Yakuza members would use this style of tattoo as a form of intimidation to other people and dedication to their criminal lifestyle. But with help from the internet, the style has gained popularity in the USA.
It's gotten a lot more popular. I would say about 20 years ago, I started seeing customers coming in asking for the basics in Japanese tattooing. Like they were asking for koi fish, dragons, tigers, and I just saw a trend starting to build. And over time, I got many more customers. People would see the work on somebody else and they'd refer them to me. And then, along with business for me getting bigger with the Japanese work, I saw it becoming popular in tattoo magazines. And this was pre-internet. And so you'd start seeing larger Japanese pieces in those, and then some books dedicated to Japanese tattooing. And then, when the internet came about, it got even bigger. And, along that time, there were people, including me, that were starting to really specialize in just that. But yeah, it's, I've seen it just explode over the last 20 years, and it's just going to keep getting bigger and bigger.
These tattoo artists almost always do it as their exclusive style. Some of them even had to go through an apprenticeship that usually lasts 3 to 4 years just to train and learn how to create these tattoos. Once they become more experienced, they can usually charge between $175 to $250 an hour. These artists also usually only do large-scale work that can take up to 50 hours to complete and have a 6-month wait time just to get started due to the high demand. The time, money, and skill required for this tattoo style puts it in a league of its own. For NT Daily, I'm Ethan Douglas.
I'm Emily.
And I'm Roman.
And we're the Villarreals. We first set the date of October 16th, 2020 in the summer of 2019. I think July is when we booked it. I first started worrying about COVID really in March, I think, when we quarantined and both started working from home. But really, we had to have those hard conversations and start making decisions about our changes in July.
You were invited to be here because you represent something important to the individual and collective lives.
I think the biggest impact that COVID had was our guest count. We wanted to make sure that we had enough space for people to socially distance and stay safe. So we had to cut down from about 270 people on our guest list, and then we had about 50 people actually able to attend.
Yeah, it was a pretty tough decision and choices we had to make on reducing the number of people we were inviting. It was definitely a tough task for us.
Yeah, it was really hard to decide. You know, out of 270 people, there were so many that we really, really wanted to be there, and we finally just decided to draw the line at our immediate family and wedding party. We did think about postponing our wedding. We never wanted to postpone the actual marriage. We always wanted to get married on our original date, but we thought about postponing the big party so that we could celebrate with everyone that we wanted to about a year. But our venue was very, very strict with our contract, and we had a hard time. We had lots of difficult conversations and debates, and ultimately we just had to continue with our contract at that venue, and we chose to reduce our guest count.
We never really thought about canceling. When this started in March, we still had time before we had to make our final payment and withdraw. It came up in, I don't know, a couple months later, and we're like, oh, this will be over in plenty of time. So we went ahead and made the final payment, and we didn't cancel.
I think all in all, we're happy with the changes that we made. It was definitely hard to get there, but the day was perfect.
Yeah, it was still a really good time. Even with the limited attendance, we had all of our closest people there, and it was a great night.
Almost all.
So, ladies and gentlemen, now we're going to hear from Ms. Anna Ward.
The person that I miss the most was my maid of honor. She's been my friend since I was 5 years old. We've been best friends forever. But she lives in Connecticut, and her husband's in the Navy, so she was not able to fly and make it for the wedding. So we had a cardboard cutout of her, and she gave her toast over Zoom. So we did what we could.
I guess I was a little bit nervous because of COVID. It always was a thing that was on our mind throughout all of the planning. But once we got there and saw how well everything was set up and all the precautions we take and took in preparation, it all worked out pretty well.
Yeah, we were so happy to see everybody and happy that people had gotten to be there. But I honestly probably didn't stop worrying until we passed that 14-day, 2.5-week mark, and no one had gotten sick.
Yeah, I think we made the right choice.
Yeah, for sure.
Now for my favorite part. By the power vested in me by the Universal Life Church in the great state of Texas, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride.